Hello, I'm Jay, owner of Volunteer Audio in Oliver Springs, Tennessee. Today, I'm going to make a video showing you how to install the new Soundstream Reserve V2 in a 2014 to 2023 Electra Glide, Street Glide, or Ultra. Today, I've got a 2019 Ultra. We're going to get into it. I'm going to show you how to take it apart and how to get your new radio put in the right way the first time. All right, so first step of installing your new radio is always going to be to install a fender protector on your front fender. If you slip and you drop a tool, we do not want it to dent or scratch the paint. All right, so first step to change our radio is going to be to remove our fairing. We're going to start on the inside of our fairing, and we're going to remove 4 T25 bolts. 2 of them are going to be at the lower portion of the inner fairing, 1 on each side, and 2 at the upper. Now, they are different lengths, so make sure you keep in mind how long they are, because we want to put the long ones back in at the top. If you put them in at the bottom, you're going to damage the paint. So it's a T25 Torx driver we're using. We're going to remove all 4 of these before we move to the outside. All right, so this is an Ultra, so in preparation to remove the fairing, we're going to take both of our front passing lamps and we're just going to rotate those to the side. All right, the only thing still holding it on are the 3 across the top. These 3 screws are also T25s. We're going to remove the 2 outside ones all the way. Keep in mind, these are the shorter ones that go at the windshield. Now, the middle one's longer, it goes all the way through, so we're just going to loosen it until we can take our windshield out. Set your windshield aside. So at this point, this bolt is all that's holding the fairing on. So I'm going to make sure that it's all the way taken loose. I'm just going to take that bolt and the fairing and I'm just going to pull it forward and lift it up over those lights and unplug our headlight. All right, so the next step, we're going to remove this vent up here at the top. There's just another T25. It's actually a T27, but your T25 will do it on each side. So we're going to remove those 2 bolts. These are the same bolts that are in the outside edge of your windshield. All right, so once we have those out, we're going to grab the vent, just set it aside. All right, so at this point, we're going to go ahead and pop loose a couple of the accessory connectors that are in the fairing. Just taking them loose from this plate. Using a panel removal tool just to unhook these Christmas tree connectors. Now, in this install, we're going to be adding an amp later, so I'm going to go ahead and pop this GPS antenna off. If you're not adding an amplifier, leave the GPS antenna connected here and just cut this zip tie loose. Our new V2 radio is going to use the factory GPS antenna. Now, if you've lost your antenna, removed it for some other reason, or maybe you had the little Boom 4.3, it's going to come with a new GPS antenna with it. You can install that on top of one of the speaker pods, or you could put it back on this metal plate, depending on if you have an amp or if you don't have an amp. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and take and pop it off. It's just 2-way taped on, so we're just going to break that tape loose. Also going to cut this zip tie, and later we'll relocate it. I'll go over that at the end as to where we're going to place it. All right, so next you're going to need a panel removal tool or something to get all the little plugs undone at the top. I normally just use my T25 screwdriver. I'm going to pop out my Christmas tree connector up here. I'm going to go underneath each one of these connectors and just unplug each one of these gauges. We're also going to pop the wiring loose on each of the upper speaker pod connections. Another little Christmas tree containers here, retainers here. And we also have an optional CB on this one that we're also going to undo from this plate. So it's the factory CB antenna. This bike doesn't have the CB. So now we're just going to remove all the screws that are on this metal plate that are above the radio. There's 2 on each side, normally going into the speaker pod. Now this bike's already missing one of them, so we'll find one and we'll put it back in at the end. There are 4 going through this plate to the radio. The new radio is going to have those same threaded inserts there. And there are 2 on each side of our speedometer that we're going to take out. So I'll start here on the speaker pods. These are an Allen head, but normally they're not really tight. So the T25 normally will take them loose. If you see they're very, very tight, get the correct Allen head. Do not strip out the head of these bolts by having the wrong tool. But as you see, these are coming out without any problem. Next, I'm going to take the two out of the base of the speedometer. Now keep up with these screws. They're a little different. These are going to be a little smaller, fine thread, and they're going to be black in color, whereas all the other ones on this install are going to be silver in color. All right, so now that we have those out, we're going to remove the 4 that are going into the top of the radio. All right, one more. Where the storage pocket connects to this plate, there's another T25 bolt. We're just going to take it out as well. This is the same bolt that goes into the top of the radio, so you have 5 that are the same. All right, so once you have those out, we have a total of 2, 4, 6 perimeter bolts, 4 into the top of the radio, and 1 here. So that's going to be a total of 11 fasteners we're taking out. This plate's going to be loose. We can take it off and set it to the side. Now we're going to go ahead and remove the speedometer / tachometer. There's only one more T25 holding it in, so we're going to take it loose. I'm going to take this and set it to the side. Now we have these little trim pieces. They're chrome in color. They're not actually fastened to here. It's just sitting on here. So make sure you don't drop those, or make sure they go back in at the end. All right, so next, before we unbolt the radio, let's go ahead and unplug all of our electrical connectors. We're going to start with the main radio connector here. There's a little black button here that you're going to push in, and then you're going to slide this over so it locks that plug in. We're going to unplug that. We now have our factory USB connector. Same kind of thing. Black plug at the top, or black push pin at the top. Push that down to release it. Slide it out. We have our AM/FM antenna. It is very similar, but the connector is on the bottom, so you're going to press that white connector on the bottom. GPS antenna. Again, a small push on the bottom of it, that little blue one there, and it's going to come loose. Now, we're going to reuse all of this on our new install. We're also going to add an additional high charge USB-C, and I'll go over that with you here in just a few minutes. But go ahead and take your USB and unclip it from the back of this pod. So now it's just a loose wire other than that factory grommet that's still installed. So let's unbolt our radio. All right, so now we're going to take a 3/16 Allen head tool, and we're going to break loose each one of our radio bolts and take those all the way out. Save these. We're going to be reusing them to put our new radio in. All right, so we just set our radio in. We're going to bolt it in. So from the factory, there are 4 little rubber bushings that are inserted in the stock radio. Now I slid those out with the bolts. Now you'll see there's a little plastic bag in your V2 radio that has 4 of those little rubber bushings. If they did not come out of the original radio, or if you don't have them, install those on the bolts. It's going to separate the 2 different types of metal so we don't have corrosion. They're also a little bushing just to center everything up. So factory bolts back into your new radio, goes right into those factory holes to have a perfect factory style fit. So after they're all started, go ahead and torque them all down. All right, so we're going to reinstall our speedometer and tachometer. All right, so we're going to run our new USB that comes with our radio into our storage pocket. First thing, let's just get everything out of the little storage pocket. So just take that little piece of foam, slide it out to make yourself a little bit of room. I want you to unclip the USB from the back of the pocket, and we're just going to push the factory USB into that pocket just a little ways. The reason we're doing this is on the back of your radio, you have a new USB. It's going to be a USB-C. It's going to work along with the factory USB, so now we actually have 2 USBs. But what we're going to do is we just push that forward just enough that we could get another grommet in behind it. So we're going to feed our new USB-C into that hole. We're then going to snap that wiring into the new grommet that came with our new Soundstream radio, feeding it into that little crack. Pushing that into it lines up in the hole they've given us. And then we're going to push that together just to give us a little airtight seal there. All right, so now we have our new USB is installed into the pocket along with our factory USB. Now you're going to see this is a little long because it also works on the Roadglides. And then our factory USB is going to plug back into the one that says USB on the back of the radio. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and go back together with the plate. I just wanted you to see that a little bit better. So we're going to take our plate and just slide it back into place. Now I'm just going to start my bolts at the bottom of our speedometer and tachometer. I'm not going to tighten them all the way up. I want to leave a little bit of room to line up all these bolts on the radio first. All right, so we're going to take our 5 little fine threaded, smaller silver screws. We're going to start 4 of them into the radio. And we're going to install the 5th one back into this little storage pocket. I'm going to go ahead and tighten it down. Now that all those are started, I'm going to tighten all of them back up. Tighten the ones at the speedometer. All right, so we have left the 4 that go in the perimeter. We're going to put all of those in. Now you may have a little bit of trouble getting these to line back up because the speaker pod is now connected to the fairing, and you can actually move the outside of the fairing a little bit and get those to line up if they're not lined up. I just pulled it just enough to let it get started. Once I've got this one started, before I tighten it, I'm going to start the one in the back. Being careful that we don't cross thread them. Both of these are in, so now I'm going to tighten them up. Again, starting one bolt and then getting the second one in straight before we tighten them. All right, so they're in and tight on both sides. Now we're just going to take our wiring that we had from earlier. We're going to snap it back in everywhere that it goes, putting it back in place. All right, so now we've got a few more connectors we need to reconnect to the back of our radio. So we do have our factory AM/FM antenna, and we have a few extra things to go over here. So we have a backup camera input. We also have a trigger to trigger on our camera. We have an antenna. That is just something that's going to stay there. Just leave it alone. And then you're going to have an input for the included wired microphone. I don't normally install the wired microphone. It does come with it. But with this radio, you have full access to wireless headsets or wireless in-ear Bluetooth devices. People are going to hear you way better with that mic than they are a mic mounted on the windshield, especially while you're going down the road or while the engine's running. We have a Sirius XM input. If you had a Sirius XM tuner, it's going to plug into this port, and that's all of the extra parts on the back. You may have been wondering what they are. But we do have our factory FM antenna. It's going to plug in where it says antenna. Now it does leave a blue port right here under the USB. That blue port is for that factory GPS antenna. We'll install that here in just a couple minutes. But next I'm going to install our main radio harness. So included with your radio is going to be a radio harness. Now when you buy from Volunteer Audio and you select either the iDataLink Maestro MRR2 or the MRR module for the radio, we're also going to have that pre-programmed and already plugged in. It is required to have one of the 2 modules or the radio doesn't turn on. This also makes your thumb controls work. It also communicates with the bike to do all the custom gauges and the motorcycle info. So it's definitely required. Now I'm going to show you where we normally put it on one of these bikes. So first I'm going to plug this into our radio. It's just like we removed the one earlier. There's this little lever that as it goes in, you're going to flip it around until you hear it lock into place. Just got a nice firm click and it locked. We're going to also plug in the factory harness the same way. Now our MRR's got a pretty good amount of lead here. We have a couple connectors here. We have our amp turn on wire. So if you're installing an amplifier, your amplifier is going to plug in here, and that's going to let the radio boot up the amp after the radio turns on to not have any kind of pops or turn on noises. We're then going to have our Maestro box, which has our 4 connectors on it. I want you to take the connectors, the one that has the most connectors, I want you to face it down. I want you to slide it into this little storage pocket area to the left of the radio. Now, it will fit in here. And this is the driest place to put it. These modules are water resistant, but they're not waterproof. By putting it in here, we find that we have the least likelihood of any water getting to it. So we have plenty of lead for it to fit. Next, I'm going to take a couple zip ties. I'm going to secure up some of this wiring to make it look even better. So after we have our Maestro in its little storage cubby there where we want it, I want you to take a zip tie and secure this wiring up here on this top corner. Have you do that, definitely make sure that you cut that zip tie off. All right, so we have a little longer USB connection as well, mainly just because on this particular, we're doing a Street Glide or Ultra, we have a Batwing fairing, we have a shorter USB. This radio is designed to also work on Roadglide, so I'm just going to take the excess wiring, I'm going to zip tie it up here so it's not just dangling around in the fairing. Also secure. Now, any of these other connections we're not using, same kind of thing. I want to take those over here to the side. I don't want to leave them just behind the headlight. And I'm going to put a zip tie around those and secure them up also. Just kind of putting them into this second little storage pocket area on the other side. Now, if you do not have this little factory USB, just go through the hole here in the top. All right, so that leaves a couple of those additional connectors. So if we were not doing an amplifier, we're just going to snap these back into the top here where they were when we started. I also want to secure the factory radio connector just kind of down here under the radio, also zip tying it back to the factory wiring. We're doing all this just to make sure we have plenty of clearance when we come on and off with our fairing. And if you're using an amp, which we're going to do later in our install, you're going to hook up your amp turn-on wire. But for now, I'll just show you how we would secure it up as if we're not doing an amplifier. All right, we should be good there. The next step, we're going to put our GPS antenna back in place. All right, so in this install, I'm actually going to relocate the GPS antenna. It was originally on this plate, but we're going to later add an amplifier. So I'm just going to take some alcohol and I'm going to clean the top of our speaker pod area up here. We'll let that dry. And I'm going to plug in our factory GPS antenna. Then I'm just going to route it up here to the top. So bring it under here. Now I've installed some 3M double-sided tape just to secure it. I'm just going to sit right up here on top of this pod. Now if you're going to do satellite radio, you're going to have a very similar antenna. You can do the exact same thing to the other side. Now I just used a piece of 3M double-sided emblem adhesive tape and I stuck it up there with that instead of leaving it here. If you're not doing an amp, just leave it right on that plate. You don't have to worry about sticking anything. So that's pretty much everything we needed to do in the fairing to get everything ready to go back on. Let's throw our fairing back on. We'll power the radio up and I'll go over the features with you. All right, so we're going to put our vent back in place. I'm just sliding it back in where it was. And our 2 bolts on either side. So we're going to take our fairing, we're going to position it back in between our lights. Then I'm going to reach in, I'm going to plug our headlight back in. At this point, I'm just going to lift up and drop our screw back in its hole. Start it just a couple threads. Just going to drop the windshield in. I'll start our outside bolts. Just lifting on my fairing to make sure the bolt starts straight. All right, so now we're going to move to the inside fairing, get those bolts in, then we'll come back and tighten those. So again, there were 4 bolts. 2 were longer, 2 were shorter. The long bolts are going to go at the top. If you put those in the bottom and you get them started and you continue to tighten them down, they will damage the outer fairing, which we don't want to do. I'm just going to start all of them first. We'll go back and tighten all of them. right, so now that all 4 are started, I'm going to start tightening these all the way down. All right, let's move around to the front. Just verifying that our windshield is all fell into place. It has. We're going to tighten our outside bolts down now. And then last but not least, that middle one. All right, so now I'm going to straighten our lights back out. We're going to pull our screen protector off. Look how beautiful that radio fits in that fairing. I love the gloss black surround. Matches the fairing wonderfully, and it's just huge. Huge screen. I'm going to go over to accessory. Looks beautiful. Look how big that screen is. So our first boot up of the radio. All right, so here we have all of our options. We're going to have wireless CarPlay and wireless Android Auto, as well as built-in navigation. Watch our nav boot up. Select our language, our location, all of those things. Now you can go back in at the end and you can make some of these changes. I'm just going to get the radio booted up here. All right, let's go back to our screen and look over all of our different options. All right, so let's bring up our apps. Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, both are wireless. Built-in iGo Primo navigation, AM/FM radio. We have our custom gauges for our bike. All right, let's go back out of there. And I hit home. Back to our apps. Beyond our gauges, we also have our motorcycle info. This is going to give us battery voltage, EITMS status. Now this is active when it's running. Our voltage will be, actually, do you have a lithium battery in here?
Yeah.
All right, so 13.7 is accurate, it is a lithium. So we're going to see here our headlights, high beam, low beam, turn signals, things like our brake lights. They're all going to show here across the top. EITMS status as well. Tire pressure monitors, if the bike has it, sometimes it'll say NA until you take it down the road and they actually activate and turn on. So we've got all that information here. We also have our headset capability, Sirius XM if you've added the tuner and the fairing. We also have our USB, so we're going to have a music USB. We're also going to have a high charge USB-C as well. We have our device list where we're going to add all of our phones here. Let's go ahead and connect the phone. So I just put my phone in pairing mode. So now we're going to see volunteer audio. We're connecting. Yes, we'll pair with it. Yeah, we would like to do wireless CarPlay. So this is our first connection ever. It's a little slower the first time. This thing is so fast to boot up after we've got a phone connected. All right, now my phone just asked me if I want to use CarPlay. I said yes. So now we're going to finish that connection. And just that fast. Look how big that screen is, how bright. Man, that thing is bright. Very, very vibrant. Got our maps. Knows where we're likely to be going today. Google Maps. It's amazing just how fast it loads. It's so responsive, so big, so bright. If we want to go back to our radio, we can actually go to our, select the Soundstream icon. You can also do all this through your thumb controls. So it works just so well. Beautiful radio. All right, so it looks great. I'm sure it sounds great. We're going to continue on with the rest of our install. So we're going to add a Hertz amplifier, Hertz speakers to finish this out. But I went over everything you need to know about how to install this radio in your 2019 Ultra. This would be the same for a 14 to 23 Street Glide, Electra Glide, or Ultra. As you see, it's not a hard process. Very easy to do. Hope this has encouraged you to take on this task, to be able to do this on your own. I know we always get a lot of enjoyment out of knowing that we did something like this and we were successful. And I know with this video, you can follow along and you can get this done. The V2 radio is awesome. I'm tickled to have it. I'm sure you're going to be excited to go on your first ride and get everything connected up and take a listen to it. Thank you so much for watching. Like this video. By doing so, it moves up our video and search results. It helps volunteer audio, and we really appreciate you doing that. Subscribe to our channel to see all of our other step-by-step videos, product review videos, and be the first to know about the latest in Harley audio as it comes out. Also follow us on Facebook as well. You'll see a lot of other videos and content we put there. Comment below if you have any questions. I'll be quick to answer it. And thank you so much for watching. And as always, God bless.